My husband said, suing his mother for tattooing. Our 3-year-old's neck would end our marriage. When I told him there's the door, he just stared at me. That was 6 months ago. This morning, he was standing outside my apartment in tears. My boyfriend comes from this my body is a canvas family. He's got tattoos covering him from head to toe, except for his face. And I've always thought this was just him being unique and eccentric. But then I met his family. They're all tattooed head to toe with Japanese sleeves covering their bodies. They're more American than deep-fried butter. And some even have their faces done too. They also act like it's a Medal of Honor or something. They find a way to work it into every conversation that it's so hard to deal with all the attention they get in public because of all of their tattoos. They say it in the way that makes it obvious they really love the attention. You know what I'm on about. All of my boyfriend's siblings and cousins went on to date people who are also inked out head to toe and had little babies who they started tattooing from 3 years old, and the family portraits are everyone smiling showing off their tattoos. So as you might expect, everyone in the family was a little thrown off when my boyfriend got together with an actual Japanese girl. Hi, it's me, without a single tattoo. I don't look like any of my boyfriend's family. I look like me. My boyfriend's mom has always been cordial with me, but you can tell the vibes are different in how she treated me versus how she treated my boyfriend's sisters. I want Yakuza tattoos, even though I'm 300 pounds and American boyfriend. I never really cared much though. I never even commented about how their tattoos are low-key disrespectful lol. But when I got pregnant, thanks life, she started being a little warmer to me. I guess people just get excited when there's a baby in the mix. Thing was, she'd throw in comments during the pregnancy about how she hopes it's raised like the rest of the family. I'd pretend I wouldn't know what she's talking about and just say, oh yeah, he'll love your homemade sushi, which was terrible BTW, and she'd just kind of smile at me without her eyes moving. Well, our son was born 3 years ago. He's half Japanese and half American, and of course was never tattooed as a baby, because my now husband is apparently the only non-insane one in his family. We've never had any problem regarding this either. When about a week ago, a family emergency came up, and I needed to travel across states to help my parents. My husband was in a super important work meeting, so I called my mother-in-law to chance if maybe she could babysit. She's never been a fan of babysitting my kid and usually found excuses to say no, but she was always good whenever she did. Well, this time she was eager to do it. I could practically hear her and her tattoos blasting through her ceiling with excitement. I should have maybe paid more attention, but my parents needed urgent help, so I waited till she arrived, then scrambled to go. My husband's meeting ended while I was still with my parents, and throughout the rest of the day, he kept texting me about how everything was fine. But then I started driving home, and the minute I backed out of my parents' driveway, my husband called me and told me I might want to get home ASAP. He said our kid will be okay, but didn't want to tell me anything over the phone so I wouldn't freak out. Of course, I kicked into high gear and broke like 10,000 laws speeding home like my Nissan had F1 level horsepower. I ran in through the front door like I was burgling my own house, where I saw my husband was standing over our kid's bed watching him sleep. I went to look, and oh my god, my 3-year-old son had a Yakuza tattoo on his neck. It was some badly drawn god-dragon combination of green and red that looked like it belonged on a wannabe gangster, not my 3-year-old. Even worse, the skin around the tattoo was dark red and pierced. The tattoo wasn't even wrapped in cling film. My dad used to be a tattoo artist. I can tell that the way this tattoo was given was not safe or sanitary. I screamed, asked my husband what his mentally deficient mother did, and he just said, oh, she thought it would be cool to welcome him into the family this way. She thinks the skin around it just had a bad reaction or something. I told him, my 3-year-old had a normal reaction to an unsanitary tattoo on his face. I actually couldn't believe my mother-in-law would take her obsession with her family looking like tourist shop eccentric paintings. So far, she'd ruined my child's life. My son was sleeping and still wincing in pain, and I felt like the worst mom in the world. I gently woke him up and took him into urgent care immediately. They cleaned the area around for potential infection and got everything sorted so he will be okay. But my 3-year-old still has a Yakuza tattoo on his neck. My husband was on my side completely and equally as outraged with his mother, but then he said he'll try talk to her about it. Try talk to her. Sir, she disfigured your 3-year-old's body. I told him that when he tries to talk to her, he better tell her to lawyer up because I'm suing. He responded that if I sue his mother, he doesn't think our marriage will last. I told him, there's the door. He's now frantically calling his mother, who's conveniently gone MIA and we don't know how to reach her. I rifled through the kitchen drawer looking for our insurance cards, my hands shaking with rage. The ceramic bowl my mother-in-law had given us at the baby shower crashed to the floor. As I bent to clean up the pieces, something caught my eye. A small SD card lay among the shattered fragments. My heart pounded as I picked it up, wondering why she'd hidden it inside a gift. The pharmacy was our next stop. My son needed antibiotics for the infection, and I wasn't going to wait another minute. As I reached for the prescription at the counter, I noticed someone at the adjacent register. My mother-in-law stood there, pretending not to see us while the pharmacist awkwardly processed both our orders. Her hand trembled as she signed the receipt, the same shaky movement I'd seen in the uneven lines of my son's tattoo. Something inside me snapped. The words erupted before I could stop them. I screamed about what she'd done to my baby, how she'd mutilated him. Other customers pulled out their phones, recording the scene. My mother-in-law remained eerily calm, telling anyone who'd listen that she was just picking up her heart medication. I looked like the unhinged one while she played the victim perfectly. My phone buzzed. Sarah, my husband's sister, needed help with a flat tire. Her text made it clear she'd only accept assistance from whoever wasn't causing family drama. My husband looked at me, then at his phone, torn between supporting his wife and helping his sister. The choice would force him to pick a side publicly, and we both knew it. I watched my mother-in-law leave the pharmacy and had to make my own choice, follow her car to see where she was hiding, or stay with my feverish son who needed comfort. As I held him close, I noticed her unconsciously rubbing her neck in the parking lot, right where she'd marked my child. My son needed me more than I needed to chase her. I stayed. That decision gave her time. Within 10 minutes, her Facebook post about trying to honor family traditions while respecting different cultures had garnered 47 sympathy reactions. Comments poured in supporting the poor grandmother just trying to love her grandson. My phone exploded with notifications as family members shared her post. Everything hit at once. My son's fever spiked, requiring an immediate ER visit. My husband's boss called, threatening his job over missed deadlines from this family crisis. My parents called, saying they were driving up after seeing the Facebook posts. The pressure mounted from every direction. At the hospital, the nurse treating my son's infection mentioned she knew my mother-in-law from book club. She went on about how devoted my mother-in-law was to all her grandchildren, inadvertently supporting her narrative. The ER bill would devastate devastate our already strained finances from the emergency cross-state trip, but I couldn't think about that now. My phone lit up with a notification from the family WhatsApp group. My mother-in-law was having a panic attack at home, live streaming her breakdown. She sobbed about just wanting to welcome him properly like all the other grandbabies. Family members rushed to comfort her virtually while I sat in a cold hospital room with my infected child. My son looked up at me with confused eyes. He asked why Grandma's special drawing hurt so much. Then he said something that made my blood freeze. Grandma had told him Daddy wanted it too. My husband's face went pale. Had he known about this beforehand? The SD card burned in my pocket. Whatever was on it might be important, but accessing it meant admitting I'd broken my mother-in-law's property. The legal implications swirled in my mind. I couldn't even check what evidence it might contain without potentially incriminating myself. My phone buzzed again. Our neighbor had posted Ring doorbell footage of me at my mother-in-law's house. I'd only gone back to retrieve our forgotten diaper bag, but the video made it look like I was breaking in, stalking a poor grandmother. The narrative was shifting against me rapidly. The next morning brought fresh complications. The daycare called about updating emergency contacts. My mother-in-law was still listed, and she was the only one who knew about my son's severe allergy to a specific antibiotic that wasn't in his main records. I'd have to communicate with her whether I wanted to or not. My husband's family started their campaign in earnest. They brought up my pattern of overreacting, referencing when I'd panicked over our son's minor fall at the playground months ago. Just like when you thought the playground was unsafe became their refrain, painting me as an unstable mother who saw danger everywhere. The family group chat exploded when my accusatory text got screenshot and reframed. My message about seeing her in court became evidence of my vindictive nature, rather than protective mothering. Every attempt to defend my child was twisted into proof of my instability. My efforts to document the tattoo from different angles were flagged by my husband's cousin as obsessive behavior. She suggested I needed a mental health evaluation, garnering agreement from other family members. The gaslighting was systematic and coordinated. I discovered my mother-in-law's control ran deeper than I'd realized. She'd been taking my husband's family to the same pediatrician for 20 years. When I called to get my son's records, the receptionist suddenly couldn't find them. His vaccination card was still at her house from our last visit, giving her another piece of leverage. 3 days without proper sleep took its toll. In my exhaustion, I accidentally gave my son the wrong dose of antibiotic. The poison control call was documented in medical records, adding to the narrative of an unstable mother who couldn't properly care for her child. The isolation began in earnest. Emma, my best friend, withdrew her support after her husband threatened divorce. She believed my mother-in-law had hurt my son but couldn't risk her marriage over our family drama. She had kids too, she said, and couldn't afford to take sides. Local Facebook mom groups turned against me. Members crossed the street to avoid the mom who was destroying that sweet grandmother's life. I saw my own face in a community drama discussion thread, painted as the villain in this twisted story. My mother-in-law's story started showing cracks. She claimed she'd taken my son to a professional licensed artist, but nervously named the wrong strip mall. Her slip-up revealed knowledge of the actual location, but proving it would be another battle entirely. Even my college roommate abandoned me. She needed my mother-in-law's connection at the county clerk's office for her small business permits. She apologized but couldn't afford to take sides. The network of influence my mother-in-law had built over decades was suffocating me. I thought I'd found a breakthrough with the tattoo parlor security footage, but my relief at finding it was witnessed at a coffee shop and spun into evidence that I was more concerned with winning than my child's well-being. Every emotion, every reaction was weaponized against me. Then came the text that chilled me to my core. My mother-in-law wrote that we both knew this would end with one of us losing everything. She'd been part of this family for 30 years. I'd been here for 5. The threat was clear, and I realized I was fighting someone who'd spent decades building the very network now destroying me. The grief counselor's office became my sanctuary twice a week. I'd been seeing her since the postpartum anxiety, and she knew everything about my mother-in-law's behavior patterns. During our session, she mentioned her brother had recently divorced and moved back to town. The way she described him set off alarm bells in my mind. He sounded exactly like my mother-in-law's type. My suspicions proved correct when I saw them together at the farmer's market. My mother-in-law hung on his arm, laughing at something he'd said. The counselor's brother caught my eye and waved enthusiastically. My mother-in-law's smile widened as she watched my reaction. She'd found another way to invade my support system. That evening, my husband and I tried to reconstruct a conversation from 2 years ago. He insisted I'd agree to let his mother guide us on family traditions. I remembered specifically excluding anything permanent. We sat at opposite ends of the couch, each convinced our memory was accurate. The argument ended with him sleeping in the guest room. Unable to sleep, I searched through our old text messages. My heart sank when I found it. 2 years ago, during a discussion about circumcision, I'd texted him that his mom knew best about family stuff. The words glared at me from the screen. I'd handed her ammunition without realizing it. My son's preschool teacher called the next morning. During circle time, he'd announced that mommy said grandma was dangerous, but grandma gave the best hugs. The teacher documented it as a behavioral concern, worried about conflicting messages at home. Another mark against my parenting added to the growing file. A memory surfaced from 6 months ago. My mother-in-law had asked about our baby monitor app, claiming she wanted to see similar technology for her house. I'd shown her how the cloud storage worked. Checking the app now, I discovered she'd upgraded our account to extended recording retention. The recordings went back months. I scrolled through hours of footage until I found it. My mother-in-law in the nursery at 2 a.m., leaning over my sleeping son. The audio picked up her whispered words about him becoming one of them. My hands shook as I saved the file. Finally, concrete evidence of her obsession. The family meeting felt like walking into an ambush. My mother-in-law sat surrounded by relatives, tissues in hand. She presented my evidence gathering as harassment, my protective instincts as paranoia. When I tried to show the nursery footage, they dismissed it as a loving grandmother checking on her grandchild. My isolation was complete. I started checking her social media obsessively. Her Amazon account was still logged in on our tablet from a visit months ago. The order history made my stomach turn. She'd bought a tattoo GN 3 months ago, along with practice skin and something labeled as infant numbing cream. The dates lined up with when she'd started pushing harder about family traditions. Her tattooed friends had been posting on Instagram about a welcoming ceremony. The posts used code words, but the meaning was clear. They'd been planning this for months. Screenshots filled my phone as I documented their conspiracy. Each piece of evidence felt like a small victory in an unwinnable war. My husband found me hunched over the tablet at 3 a.m., surrounded by printouts and notes. He looked at the evidence spread across our dining table and shook his head. His mother had already told told him I was becoming obsessed. Now he saw what she meant. I watched him question my mental state in real time. The marriage counselor we'd been seeing suddenly had scheduling conflicts. When we finally got an appointment, she seemed different. She asked pointed questions about my desire to move away from his family. Every answer I gave seemed to confirm some preconceived notion. I realized too late that she'd been talking to my mother-in-law's new boyfriend. I attempted to record my mother-in-law during pickup at the community pool. I held my phone low, pretending to text while she talked about the tattoo, but she spotted the screen's reflection in the glass door. Her expression shifted to a knowing smile as she smoothly changed the subject to the weather. She'd been expecting this. My son's swim instructor called about a confusing incident. My mother-in-law had arrived claiming to have emergency custody paperwork. The instructor, thankfully, had refused to release him without verification, but the attempt showed my mother-in-law was escalating, testing boundaries to see what she could get away with. The tattoo parlor employee agreed to meet me at a coffee shop. He looked nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder. He started to tell me about the night my mother-in-law brought my son in, but his phone rang. After a brief conversation, his face paled. An anonymous health department complaint had been filed against the shop. He apologized and left without another word. I discovered my mother-in-law had been sleeping in my son's room during her visits. My husband admitted this sheepishly, saying she claimed it helped her feel closer to him. Even worse, my son mentioned that grandma had been wearing my missing maternity clothes. She was literally trying to replace me in my own home. The offer came through my husband. My mother-in-law would pay for the tattoo removal if I dropped everything, and admitted this was a cultural misunderstanding. She'd found the best specialist in the state, someone who could minimize scarring. All I had to do was apologize publicly for overreacting. The generosity of her compromise made me look even more unreasonable for refusing. My investigation led me to the daycare's security footage. I convinced an employee to check the attendance records, which showed my son had been checked in during the time the tattoo was supposedly done. But the parking lot camera revealed my husband's car at my mother-in-law's house 2 hours earlier. He'd known something and said nothing. Going through my husband's phone while he showered, I found a hidden notes app titled Grocery Lists. Inside were months of documented concerns about his mother's behavior. He'd been tracking her escalation but felt trapped between protecting our son and maintaining family peace. His cowardice had enabled her assault on our child. The revelation that my mother-in-law had bought supplies for her adult cousin's tattoo appointment complicated everything. My proof of premeditation suddenly looked like circumstantial evidence. She'd covered her tracks by having a legitimate reason for every purchase. The cousin even confirmed the appointment, though the timing seemed too convenient. My own mother arrived after driving 10 hours straight. I expected support, but her face showed exhaustion beyond the physical. She sat at my kitchen table looking between me and my son. Her words cut deep when she asked if I was willing to lose my son the way I'd lost myself to this war. She couldn't pick sides without losing access to her grandchild. Desperate for allies, I started using my mother-in-law's own tactics. I befriended her hairdresser, scheduling appointments at the same salon. During casual conversation, I learned about my mother-in-law's recent health concerns and her fear of running out of time to pass on family traditions. The information felt valuable but dirty in my hands. A chance encounter at the grocery store put me next to my mother-in-law's priest. I struck up a conversation about the church's community center, mentioning I was considering it for my son's birthday party. He offered to show me around, giving me access to areas where security cameras might have captured something useful. The church janitor remembered me from when I'd helped during his medical emergency last year. He mentioned seeing my mother-in-law's car in the parking lot during evening hours when she'd claimed to be home. He couldn't provide footage but offered to write a statement about what he'd observed. Small victories in a losing battle. My husband's ex-girlfriend emerged from nowhere, filing for custody rights. She claimed she understood the family traditions better than an outsider ever could. The bizarre legal filing meant I was now fighting on two fronts. My lawyer explained that while her claim was baseless, it would complicate our existing case. The pediatric specialist appointment had been scheduled for months. In the chaos of everything, I missed it. The office marked it as a no-show, noting medical negligence in my son's file. My mother-in-law had somehow known about the appointment and used my absence as evidence of my inability to prioritize my son's health needs. My credit card started declining. The legal fees had drained our savings, and my mother-in-law had convinced my husband to redirect funds to a family account for our son's medical needs. She used this account to pay for therapy sessions focused on maternal trauma, painting herself as the stable caregiver stepping in during a crisis. The confrontation at the ice cream shop happened without warning. My mother-in-law appeared with several family members while my son and I were sharing a sundae. I lost control, screaming about child mutilation while she calmly ordered a vanilla cone. The teenage employees looked terrified. Videos of my outburst appeared online within hours. My remote work contract ended abruptly. The client cited excessive personal calls during business hours affecting deliverables. I learned later that my replacement was my mother-in-law's neighbor's daughter. The network she'd built over decades was systematically destroying my ability to support myself and my son. Living in the extended stay motel felt like rock bottom. My mother-in-law had temporarily moved into our family home to help my husband cope with our separation. She cooked in my kitchen, slept in my bed, and played with my son in the yard I'd landscaped. Every photo my husband sent showed her in my place. My father's call came late one night. His voice broke as he begged me to stop the war. He said watching me destroy myself was killing my mother. The man who'd taught me to fight for what was right was asking me to surrender. I hung up without answering, unable to bear his disappointment. The daycare worker I'd asked for help faced suspension for sharing enrollment information. Her supervisor called me directly, explaining how my investigation had violated privacy policies. The worker's daughter had asked why the mean lady made her mommy cry. I was becoming the villain in other people's stories too. News of the suspension spread quickly. The daycare worker's husband filed for divorce, citing the stress of her involvement in toxic family drama. Their marriage couldn't survive the pressure I'd brought into their lives. My fight for justice was leaving casualties in its wake. I continued pushing forward, even knowing the damage I was causing. Each piece of evidence felt crucial, worth the collateral damage. But when my last supporting friend asked if the tattoo might have been meant with love, just expressed wrongly, I couldn't answer without sounding vengeful. The truth was getting lost in my need to win. Standing in family court, I made a calculated decision. I admitted to my past postpartum anxiety, laying bare my mental health history. It was the only way to maintain credibility about my current state of mind. My mother-in-law's lawyer took notes, planning to use every admission against me. The hidden notes app on my phone contained documentation I'd forgotten about. Scrolling through, I found my own entries from months ago about my son complaining that grandma was too huggy and whispered too much. I'd dismissed his discomfort as shyness. The evidence showed I'd failed failed to protect him long before the tattoo incident. My mother-in-law's lawyer filed an emergency motion, moving our hearing up by 2 months. He cited our child's urgent need for stability. My own lawyer was attending his daughter's wedding and couldn't adequately prepare. The system seemed rigged against me at every turn. During a supervised visit, I watched my mother-in-law with my son, her eyes filled with tears as she explained how she just wanted him to belong, to be part of their family tradition. She genuinely believed she was giving him a gift. Her recent heart diagnosis had made her desperate to ensure her grandson carried on their legacy before it was too late. The therapy sessions with my son became a source of evidence. I found myself recording them secretly, documenting the psychological impact of the tattoo. Each session meant breaking my promise never to spy on his feelings. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, manipulating my own child for evidence. My mother-in-law's adult niece reached out unexpectedly. She'd been disturbed by family group chat messages about marking the next baby. She forwarded screenshots showing months of planning, code words for tattoo appointments, and discussions about the right age to start. Finally, someone from their side saw the truth. A small victory came when we proved the pattern of forced tattooing in the family, but it felt hollow as I watched my mother-in-law sob at my son's hospital bed during an infection scare. We both held his hands, united in our fear for his health. In that moment, we were just two women who loved the same child. The counter-narrative gained momentum. My mother-in-law's lawyer argued I was culturally insensitive, isolating my child from loving extended family over aesthetic preferences. The family's testimony painted me as an outsider who never tried to understand their traditions. Every accusation held a grain of truth twisted into a weapon. Everything hinged on my husband's testimony. Would he admit to knowing about the plan beforehand? His position between his mother and wife had become untenable. The man I'd married was disappearing under the pressure, replaced by someone who just wanted the conflict to end. My past kindness haunted me. My mother-in-law's other grandchildren asked why they couldn't see their cousin anymore. Their innocent questions became leverage, evidence of how I was destroying family bonds. The 8-year-old's tearful plea was documented and submitted to the court. The hospital where I worked became divided. Colleagues chose sides based on whether they saw a protective mother or a woman destroying her family over a tattoo. Break room conversations stopped when I entered. Professional relationships I'd built over years crumbled under the weight of personal drama. The judge's words during a preliminary hearing chilled me. She explained that aesthetic choices, however distasteful, weren't automatically abuse without provable harm. The legal system I'd counted on for justice operated on different principles than maternal instinct. I was losing ground in every arena. Desperate, I called my husband's childhood doctor. My father had mentored him early in his career, and I was calling in that decades-old debt. He agreed to provide a medical opinion on the infection risk, but wouldn't testify about family dynamics beyond his expertise. Even favors had limits. The medical records revealed what I'd suspected. My son had a severe reaction to the adhesive used. My mother-in-law had known about his sensitivity, but proceeded anyway, believing temporary discomfort was worth lifetime belonging. Her love had literally hurt him, but proving malicious intent was another matter. My son's allergy to the tattoo materials confirmed medical endangerment beyond just sanitation issues. The reaction could have been fatal if we hadn't sought immediate treatment. My mother-in-law had his allergy list, but ignored it in her desperation to mark him as family. Love and harm intertwined in ways the court struggled to separate. The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. The tattoo parlor employee, facing health department investigation, provided a receipt showing my mother-in-law had paid cash for infant skin numbing cream. The product was specifically marketed for medical procedures on babies. She'd planned for his pain but proceeded anyway. With evidence in hand, I faced a choice. Criminal prosecution would mean public trials, media attention, and my son testifying. The alternative was family court resolution with protective orders. Justice versus protection. I chose my son's well-being over my need for vindication. My mother-in-law's overconfidence became her downfall. During a court recess, she posted on Facebook about giving her grandson his heritage regardless of the outcome. The screenshot entered evidence showed her lack of remorse. She'd admitted publicly what she'd denied in court. Standing before the judge, I presented evidence without vindictiveness. Every document focused on my son's medical needs and future protection. I watched my mother-in-law realize she'd lost. Her network, her influence, her decades of control crumbled under the weight of documented truth. The momentum shifted as witness after witness confirmed the pattern of prioritizing tradition over child safety. Former friends of the family came forward with their own stories. The tattoo artist admitted he'd told her to wait, but she'd insisted. The truth emerged through cracks in their solidarity. Both sides prepared for the final custody determination. My husband sat in the middle of the courtroom aisle, physically representing his torn loyalties. His choice would determine not just custody, but the future of every relationship in our fractured family. The dragon tattoo on my son's neck had become a permanent reminder of how love could become dangerous when it denied someone's right to choose who they were. The medical records spread across the table painted a damning picture. My son's reaction to the adhesive wasn't just severe, it was life-threatening. The allergist confirmed what I'd suspected. My mother-in-law had access to his complete allergy profile but chose to ignore it. The numbing cream receipt showed premeditation, but her recent heart diagnosis complicated everything. I watched my husband struggle with his testimony preparation. He paced our motel room, practicing different versions of the same story. Each iteration revealed more of what he'd hidden. His mother had been discussing the tattoo for months, showing him designs, asking about timing. He thought she was just fantasizing, never believing she'd act on a 3-year-old. The tattoo artist finally agreed to testify after his shop faced closure. He described my mother-in-law arriving with my sleeping son, insisting the procedure happen immediately. He'd refused initially, citing age restrictions and lack of parental consent. She'd offered triple his usual rate in cash. His testimony would prove she'd actively sought someone willing to break regulations. My mother-in-law's niece provided more evidence. The family WhatsApp messages showed a coordinated plan to welcome all the grandchildren. They discussed techniques for keeping young children still, debated optimal placement for visibility, even researched which designs would age well as children grew. The conspiracy ran deeper than individual actions. During my son's medical evaluation, the dermatologist discovered something crucial. The tattoo ink contained metals my son was allergic to, causing ongoing inflammation. Removal would require multiple laser sessions once the infection fully cleared, each carrying risks for a child his age. The permanent damage extended beyond the visible mark. My husband's testimony day arrived with unexpected revelations. Under oath, he admitted to seeing tattoo supplies in his mother's craft room weeks before the incident. treatment. He'd convinced himself they were for her adult clients, not wanting to believe his mother capable of harming their child. His voice broke as he described choosing denial over protection. The Guardian ad litem interviewed my son using child-appropriate techniques. Through play therapy and careful questions, she documented his fear of grandma's special drawings and confusion about why it hurt when other family members didn't. His innocent responses revealed the psychological impact beyond physical harm. I discovered my mother-in-law had been medicating my son during the tattooing. The numbing cream she'd purchased contained lidocaine levels unsafe for children. Combined with his allergies, it could have caused cardiac complications. The medical expert testified that we were fortunate he'd survived without permanent organ damage. My mother-in-law's breakdown during cross-examination revealed her true motivations. She sobbed about her father disowning her for getting tattoos, how she'd built this family tradition to heal that rejection. Every grandchild's tattoo represented reclaiming what she'd lost. Her trauma had become our son's trauma in an endless cycle. The other grandchildren's testimony, given through child advocates, exposed the family's normalization of the practice. They described decoration ceremonies, where adults held them still for tattoos, promises of toys and treats for not crying, and praise for being brave during the pain. The pattern of coercion disguised as love became undeniable. Financial records subpoenaed from the tattoo parlor showed my mother-in-law had paid for 12 children's tattoos over the years, all under age 5. Some artists had refused, but she'd always found someone willing. The judge reviewed receipts dating back 2 decades, each representing a child whose bodily autonomy was violated. My husband filed for separation during the trial's recess. He couldn't reconcile his role in enabling his mother's actions with being a protective father. The papers cited irreconcilable differences, but we both knew it meant choosing between his mother and his child's safety. He chose our son. The social worker's home study revealed my mother-in-law's house contained a makeshift tattoo station in the basement. Practice skins with children's names, design templates sized for small bodies, and medical supplies showed ongoing preparation for future ceremonies. She'd been planning to mark every grandchild eventually. Expert testimony on childhood trauma explained how forced body modification affects developing identity. Children learn their bodies aren't their own, that love requires accepting physical pain, that family membership demands permanent marking. The psychologist's words made several jury members visibly uncomfortable. My mother-in-law's sister testified reluctantly about their childhood. Their father had struck them for defiling their bodies with tattoos. My mother-in-law had sworn her children would never feel that rejection. Instead, she'd created the opposite extreme: mandatory marking for belonging, generational trauma perpetuating through inverted repetition. The prosecution presented evidence of my mother-in-law grooming other family members to continue the tradition. Text messages showed her instructing cousins on proper technique, sharing contacts for willing artists, even offering to pay for supplies. She'd been building a network to ensure the practice survived beyond her. My son's infection required surgical debridement when antibiotics proved insufficient. I held him as they wheeled him into surgery, promising the doctors would make the hurt stop. The surgeon later confirmed the infection had nearly reached his bloodstream. Another day's delay could have been fatal. Character witnesses for my mother-in-law described a woman desperate for family cohesion. They spoke of her generosity, her devotion to grandchildren, her fear of being forgotten. Several admitted knowing about the tattoos but thinking them harmless, just grandmother's quirky tradition. Their testimony revealed community-wide enabling. The judge ordered a cultural expert to evaluate whether tattooing children held legitimate traditional significance. The expert's report was damning. While many cultures practice body modification, none endorsed forcing it on unwilling children or ignoring medical contraindications. My mother-in-law's claims of cultural tradition were fabricated justification. I met with the prosecutor to discuss charging options: assault, child endangerment, practicing medicine without a license. The list was extensive, but criminal charges meant my son testifying, media attention, years of legal proceedings. I had to weigh justice against his need for normalcy and healing. My mother-in-law's health deteriorated during the trial. Her heart condition worsened under stress, requiring hospitalization. I found myself checking on her condition, unable to completely sever the connection. She was still my son's grandmother, still the woman who'd loved him in her broken way. The tattoo removal consultation brought new complications. The specialist explained that laser treatment on young skin carried risks: scarring, pigmentation changes, pain requiring sedation. We'd have to wait until he was older, meaning years of visible reminder. The dragon would remain part of his identity through crucial developmental stages. Other families began coming forward. Parents who'd resisted the tattooing tradition described pressure, exclusion, accusations of not truly belonging. Some had cut contact entirely, isolating their children from extended family. The practice had fractured relationships across generations. My husband's therapy records, submitted as evidence, revealed years of internal conflict. He'd been tattooed at 4, told it was a privilege, a sign of being loved. Only after becoming a father did he question the practice. His sessions documented the slow realization that love shouldn't require permanent marking. The final witnesses were the children themselves. Through careful, age-appropriate testimony, they described their experiences. Some had been too young to remember. Others recalled being held down, promised rewards for compliance. Their words stripped away any remaining pretense that this was harmless tradition. My mother-in-law's final statement to the court was rambling but revealing. She spoke of wanting her grandchildren to never feel excluded, to carry visible proof of belonging. She genuinely believed she was protecting them from the rejection she'd experienced. Her distorted love had become dangerous obsession. The verdict came after 3 days of deliberation: guilty of assault, child endangerment, and practicing medical procedures without authorization. The judge emphasized that cultural tradition never justified violating children's bodily autonomy or medical safety. Sentencing would consider her age, health, and lack of prior record. I requested the opportunity to speak at sentencing. Standing before the court, I described not a monster but a grandmother whose trauma had poisoned her love. I asked for mandatory therapy, supervised visitation after treatment, and legal prohibition against any body modifications until my son's 18th birthday. The judge's sentence reflected the complexity: 2 years probation, mandatory psychological treatment, parenting classes focused on bodily autonomy, and supervised visitation after completing 6 months of therapy. No jail time due to her age and health, but strict legal boundaries protecting my son and other grandchildren. My husband and I met with a mediator to establish custody arrangements. We agreed on joint legal custody with primary physical custody to me. He acknowledged his failure to protect our son, committing to therapy before unsupervised visitation. dragon. Our marriage was over, but our co-parenting could begin healing. The restraining provisions specifically prohibited any family member from attempting body modifications on minors. The order extended to all grandchildren, protecting future victims. Several family members expressed relief. They'd wanted to refuse but hadn't known how without destroying relationships. My son started play therapy to process the trauma. The therapist used dolls and art to help him express feelings about the hurt mark and confusion about why grandma had done it. Healing would take time, but he was young enough for resilience with proper support. I enrolled in trauma-informed parenting classes, learning to help my son reclaim his bodily autonomy. We practiced consent in daily activities, asking before hugs, respecting no, letting him control his appearance within reason. Every choice reinforced that his body belonged to him alone. The scar tissue from the infection required ongoing monitoring. Monthly dermatology appointments tracked healing, watched for complications. The dragon's outline remained visible beneath the scarring, a permanent reminder that would require explanation as he grew older. Support came from unexpected sources. Other parents who'd resisted family pressure reached out, forming an informal network. We shared resources, validated each other's choices, created the community we'd lost by protecting our children. Isolation transformed into connection. My mother-in-law completed her mandatory therapy, writing letters of apology she wasn't yet allowed to send. Her therapist reported genuine progress in understanding the harm caused, though deeply ingrained beliefs changed slowly. Healing generational trauma required patience from everyone involved. The first supervised visitation occurred 8 months later. My mother-in-law sat stiffly in the social worker's office, tears streaming as my son hid behind my legs. When she didn't push for physical contact, respecting his fear, I saw genuine change beginning. Recovery would be measured in small victories. My workplace transferred me to a different department, away from colleagues who'd taken sides. The fresh start helped rebuild professional reputation damaged by personal drama. Financial recovery from legal fees would take years, but stability slowly returned. New traditions emerged to replace harmful ones. Family gatherings centered on activities respecting everyone's autonomy. Cooking together, storytelling, crafts that didn't require permanent marking. Some relatives embraced change while others remained distant. The family forever altered but not destroyed. My son chose his first temporary tattoo at age 4, a butterfly that washed off at bath time. He delighted in the choice, the impermanence, the control over his appearance. These small acts of bodily autonomy helped reclaim what had been stolen. The dragon tattoo became part of his story, requiring age-appropriate explanations. We called it his warrior mark, evidence of surviving something difficult. The narrative would evolve as he grew, always emphasizing his strength rather than victimization. 5 family members eventually sought their own therapy, recognizing how normalized trauma had shaped their choices. The ripple effects of one court case exposed decades of harmful patterns. Change came slowly but consistently as truth replaced denial. My ex-husband found balance between supporting his mother's healing and protecting our son. He attended every therapy session, documented his growth, slowly earned trust through consistent actions. Our relationship evolved from marriage to cooperative parenting. The tattoo shop that had performed the procedure lost its license permanently. Word spread through the community about establishments willing to tattoo minors, creating informal accountability. My son's pain had protected other children from similar harm. I started volunteering with child advocacy organizations, sharing our story to educate about bodily autonomy. Speaking publicly felt vulnerable but necessary. If one family recognized warning signs and protected their child, the exposure was worthwhile. My mother-in-law's letters finally arrived, filled with genuine remorse and understanding. She acknowledged stealing my son's choice, prioritizing her trauma over his safety. The words couldn't undo damage but showed real growth. Forgiveness would come eventually, though trust required longer rebuilding. The dragon remained on my son's neck as he started kindergarten. We'd prepared him for questions, practiced responses emphasizing his ownership of the story. When classmates asked about it, he simply said it was his warrior mark, proof he was brave. Children accepted this explanation without judgment. Some family relationships never recovered. Relatives who saw the verdict as betrayal maintained distance. Others quietly thanked me for breaking the cycle. The family split reflected deeper truths about enabling harmful traditions versus protecting vulnerable members. My son's medical team recommended waiting until age 10 for removal attempts. By then, his skin would better tolerate laser treatment. We marked calendars, planned for the expense, but also prepared for the possibility he might choose to keep it. His body, his choice. Therapy revealed my own growth through the ordeal. I'd transformed from people-pleasing daughter-in-law to fierce advocate. The crisis had destroyed much, but revealed core strength. My son would grow up seeing his mother fight for his autonomy, a powerful lesson despite the cost. The legal precedent helped other families. Lawyers referenced our case when protecting children from forced body modification, disguised as tradition. The judge's ruling became a resource for those navigating similar situations. Our pain had created protection for others. My mother-in-law's final therapy report showed sustained progress. She understood the difference between loving someone and controlling them. Her relationship with my son might rebuild slowly, always supervised, but the possibility existed. Redemption remained achievable through consistent work. 2 years later, life had stabilized into new patterns. My son attended therapy monthly, processing experiences through play. I maintained boundaries while allowing supervised grandmother visits. My ex-husband co-parented effectively. The dragon tattoo persisted, but no longer defined us. We'd survived by choosing protection over punishment, healing over revenge. The scars, physical and emotional, would remain, but we'd broken the cycle, ensuring my son's children would never question their bodily autonomy. Love would mean respect, not control. The dragon had taught us that distinction.